Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to my tutorial for the forms coding assignment. And the forms coding assignment is based upon chapters 7, 8, and 9 in the Pinkham text, Django Unleashed. And it's just kind of organized in a way that we don't go through all of the kind of beginning and intermediate versions of the code. We just go right to the code that we're going to use. And then the other thing is that we're kind of doing things in a sequence that makes it easier to test than you might if you followed exactly the sequence in the Pinkham book. But for the most part, we're following the principles in the Pinkham book. I'm going to break this up into three parts because this forms assignment, the forms feature in Django is what's going to allow us to take a pretty rudimentary application that we have for our easy university database and to make it a full-featured CRUD database application. CRUD stands for the four features of databases. C is for create. R is a lot of times they say is for retrieve. U is for update, D is for delete. Well, the only thing we have so far is the R. Okay, we did for each of our tables, we have a list of all of the instances in that table. So we have an instructor list, a semester list, a course list, etc. And then we have detail pages. So we have an instructor detail, a course detail, etc. So that gives us the R of CRUD. Those two page types give us a proper R of CRUD, but they don't give us the C, the U, and the D, and that's what we're doing in this assignment. So what we're going to do is for each of our tables, we're going to create pages where we're able to create a new whatever, instructor, section, course, etc. Then when we get all those done and tested, we're going to move on to make update pages. And then when we get those going and all tested, then we're going to make delete pages. And so this naturally breaks up into three parts. So part one is going to be us making the create pages. Part two is us making the update pages. Part three is us making the delete pages. And there's a lot of stuff to remember here. As you can see, each of these things takes about 6 steps. And I thought this would be a great time for us to have a cheat sheet or a checklist to make sure as we're going through them that we don't forget to do some part. Generally, if we forget to do some part, we find out pretty quickly because it doesn't work. But this will help you to concentrate on it. The approach I'm going to take is one I've taken in the past. In the tutorial, I'm going to show you the task being done for the instructor and for the section, and then I'm going to leave you to do the course, the semester, and the student. Okay, so we're going to do that for all three of these parts. So why don't we jump into part one, the create pages. And what are the steps? Well, we need to create we need to put some code into forms.py for our table that we're working with. And the kind of class we're going to create is a model form class. It's a subclass of model form. And so we're going to do that first. Then we're going to come up with the template for the create page. Then we're going to come up with the URL pattern for the create page. Then we're going to add a class-based view for the create page in views.py. Then we're going to go to the list page for whatever table we're working on, instructor list, section list, etc. And we're going to add a link for creating a new whatever, instructor section, course, etc. Okay, so that's where that's going to go. And then, of course, we're going to test. Our approach is going to be we're going to go through all 6 of the steps for the first one, and then I'll go through it again for the second one, and then I'll take a pause and you'll go do it for the last 3, course, semester, and student. All right, so let's take a look at what we have here. I've got pie chart up, and the version we should start with is where we were at the end of the link pages tutorial. Okay, and we should make sure that that still works. So I'm going to crank up the development server. That was not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to create a console, but that's not going to hurt us. Let's say that we wanted to run manage pi. So we're going to start the server with run server. And now we can click on the link. And again, we should have the list and the detail pages. So let's just run through and make sure they work. So if we go to the instructor list, that's fine. And we'll click on a link. We'll go to a detail page. That worked fine there. Sections. Here are all the sections. And click on a link. Go to a detail page. That's fine. Courses. Here are all the courses. Click on a link. Go to the detail page. Okay. Semesters. Likewise. Here are all the semesters. Click on a link. Go to the detail page. And then students. Here are all the students. Click on a link and go to the detail page. So that's where we were at the end of the last coding assignment, and that's where we take up now. Okay. So let me pause while I get my stuff in order. Okay. And just to remember what we're going to do first, first we're going to create forms.py. We don't have one yet. And then we're going to put the code in there for the instructor form. Okay, so let's do that. So forms.py is going to go into course info, because this is all part of the course info app. So we want to create a new Python file called forms. Okay, and that's good. And what are we going to do? Well, let's get started with our first. Let's not do the imports first, but let's get started down here. We're going to use a particular kind of form called a model form. This is a form that binds to the model classes that we have, and it's particularly helpful for database, data entry, maintenance for a typical CRUD application that we're doing. So let's declare a class, and it's called Instructor Form. And from the forms package, we're going to, the superclass is going to be the model form class. Okay. We're going to need an import here, so I'm just going to highlight that and press Alt Return and say we want to import that name. Django's forms. Okay, that's good. Okay. And of course we need a colon there. Okay, and inside of it, first we're going to declare an internal class called meta. And we've done this before. That kind of stands for metadata. So we're going to say the model that we're linking up with is instructor. Okay. And we want to say how many fields, just instructor, not instructor form. The fields that we want on the form are, we're going to say all the fields. And how do we do that? Well, we point to a method called all. Perhaps that's a field called all. You never really know. And then with instructor, we need to do an import. So again, let's do Alt Return, import that, and that's resolved. So that's going to get us a model form based on the instructor model class, and we're going to represent all the fields. Okay? And what other kind of stuff are we going to do here? Well, you'll recall from the text that there's cleaning that can go on the data that comes in from the form. Okay? And so the question is for the instructor fields, which are first name and last name, do we need to do any cleaning? And here's what I'm going to say. I think we only need to strip out extra spaces. Okay? Because this, if you look at what Pinkham does, he's shifting case on text and all that kind of stuff. And some of it has to do with the nature of those slug fields. It also has to do with the nature of the database that he has. He has a database that only supports his blog. Nobody else is going to consume that database, okay? For our database, that's not necessarily true, okay? We have an app that's going to work with the database, but we've been trying to build it in a way that it's a typical relational database. So, whereas he will take names and shift them to lowercase and then transform them with filters as he renders them in the templates. That's not really going to work in some kind of, somebody goes to our database and just uses SQL to query the database. Without the Django infrastructure, then we're going to have all lowercase names. So you'll recall that when we put the data in, we used a proper case for names, and we're going to do that. So we're not going to change case on anything, but users often will accidentally put in spaces either before or after a character string, and we can get them out of there with a strip. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a method for cleaning the first name. Boy, that's not what we wanted at all. Okay. Sorry about that. Def clean first name. And that's going to get the parameter self. And what do we want to do? Well, we're going to return a string, and it's going to come out of cleaned data. And what member do we want in that? Well, we want the one that's associated with first name. And after that, we want to do a strip. Okay? And that is it. Okay, so we just want to return the cleaned version of it, and we want to do a strip on top of that to make sure that we don't have any extra spaces on the front or the back. And for the last name, we can just kind of clone this code. Okay, we're just going to come in here and we only want one line between these. And we need a clean last name because that's the other field. And in here, we're going to say last name. And this needs to be indented. One more line. And there we go. Okay, so it's really that simple. We're really not doing that much here. We're not really validating the data too much. If you put in a character string, we're going to trust you that it's a proper name. We're just going to help you out with extra spaces, and we're not going to try to do a form level clean where we're comparing the values of more than one field. This is not so sophisticated an application. All right, so that's our form. Okay. So where are we going to go from there? Well, let's go back to our checklist or cheat sheet. So we've got a form for instructor. We need a template for this page. Okay. All right. So what kind of page is this? Well, this is the create page. Okay. Now, what template are we going to use? Let's go look. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into my templates. Okay. And I'm going to want to create a template called Instructor Form. So let's create a new HTML file. And it's going to be called Instructor Form. Okay. And what's going to go in it? Well, I'm just going to show you the code I came up with. We're not going to develop it line by line. Probably better just seeing it here, and then we'll kind of explain our way through it. Okay, so here's Instructor Form. Okay, and how's it the same or different than things we've seen before? Well, it's a typical template. Okay, we're extending the base template. Okay, we have 2 blocks that are going to come from here and get inserted into the base template. One is the title block, and one is the content block. Okay, and the title here is Create Instructor. Okay, and then we have a form inside of that that's going to make that happen. Okay, and we're using the very simplest form of we're using the very simplest version of how to create a form. Okay, in the text, Pinkham does, I think, a very good job of showing how you can either use less magic or more magic, and he kind of demonstrates the versions from less to more. And this version of rendering the form, this form as P, which stands for create the form in a paragraph. This is all magic, okay? And how did I decide to use this? Well, right now I'm not doing a lot of fancy styling. Okay, so this is going to put it out in wrap by HTML. That's pretty standard, and that's good. And maybe when I go to create my CSS, I'm going to be able to, to style it without without having to change this. Or perhaps if I need to get more control over the styling and the layout, I may have to back up to this form as P, and I might want to go back to one of the earlier versions that Pinkham shows us how to do, where we get kind of more control about how the data are being inserted into the HTML, and we can give it, some tags. We can give it class attributes. We can give it ID attributes. We could give it span attributes. We could put things into divs, or we could do all kinds of things like that. But for right now, we're just going to take it as it comes out magically. Okay. Interesting things to see here. Okay. Within the form, the action is the URL that we're going to go to. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, we use this template tag, the curly %1, and we say we want a URL, and we want it based on the instructor create URL pattern in course info. Okay, we haven't created that yet, so we're going to have to do that next. The method is going to be equal to post. Okay. Typically, when you are using a form, you would like to use post rather than get. Okay. If in fact, one of the differences in using get instead of post is if you say get, then it encodes all of your form field values into the URL, whereas if you use post here as the method, they're not visible in the URL, and most people prefer that. There's a button down here, a typical one that says create instructor, and the other thing that we have is we have this CSRF token, which is put here to create cross-site scripting attacks. And this is another piece of Django magic. We just have to put that in there. So that's all pretty straightforward stuff. Okay. Key things that you want to get right. You definitely want to get the URL right. Okay. If you get the wrong URL, you're going to be having this thing going to the wrong view. And when it goes to the wrong view, then it might do something other than what you wanted to do. And it's really important to get the method correct. Okay. Because you might accidentally put a get here and not get the behavior that you want either. Okay, so that's that. All right, and let's take a peek at what comes up next. We want to create the URL pattern for this page, so let's go do that. Okay, so shrink this little guy, and we're going to find the URL pattern. And let's go to the URL patterns. Okay. Let's look. So far we have an instructor list, an instructor detail, and now we want to create an instructor create, and it's most like our instructor list. Okay. So let's take the code that we now have for instructor list, and let's put it down here under instructor detail, and put it in and say, okay, it's going to come in, look in the same way as instructor list, except that it's going to keep going. So it's going to say instructor create. It's going to look like that. Okay. And then the view name, of course, is not going to be instructor list. It's going to be instructor create. Okay. And then this name for the URL pattern is not going to be instructor list URL pattern. It's going to be instructor create URL pattern. And that should work pretty well. The only problem we have is that we're directing it towards a view that we don't have. Now we get two problems here. One is that we haven't done an import. So we're going to need to import instructor create. And I like to keep these things in order up here. So I'm just going to add instructor create up here. Okay. And now we don't have an import problem, but we're pointing to a view that's not there. But that shall resolve on its own. Okay. All right, now let's look at our checklist again. So we have a URL pattern. That was number 3. Number 4, we need a class-based view for this page. Okay, well, let's take a look at what a class-based view for a create should look like. Okay. So let's go to views. We got views here. So we have an instructor list. We have an instructor detail. I try to keep these in order. So we need an instructor create. So let's do that. So our instructor create is going to have some interesting parts, okay? Because the creates, because they're not passing primary keys, right? They all can, each of the creates can be pretty similar to the others. So we're going to create a mix-in. Okay, so let's put in the instructor create code first. Okay, so let's come down to instructor detail view. Next, we want instructor create. So instructor create, it's going to use the instructor form. We're going to need an import for that, alt return, and that's resolved. And we have a utility class. We're going to call it object create mixin. It's a mixin class, and we're going to put that into utils. Okay, so let's go to utils. Okay, and let's create an object create mixin. So do we have a utils? No, we don't have a utils. So we're going to need a utils.py. It's usually where we put the mixins. So new Python utils. Okay, and let's look at the mixin. Okay, so I'm just going to, again, I'm going to show you the code that I've already baked and talk you through it rather than doing it line by line. Okay, so we're going to be able to use this object create mixin for all 5 of the model classes, all 5 of the tables. Okay, so we've got some general code here, and in the In the view code, all we're going to really need to do is to fill in the particulars. For instance, what are the methods that we want to support? What are the HTTP methods that we want to support? Well, get and post. Okay. And why do we need a get and a post? Well, this is pretty interesting to think of. Okay. First of all, we need to display the form, right? And then after we've already filled in the form, we need to process it. Okay. So typically a get comes from clicking a link. Okay. So if you click a link in an HTML page, what will be generated? What kind of HTTP request will be generated? Well, you'll get a get. Okay. So the link that we click on that says, "Oh, I want to create a new instructor." Well, where's that going to go? Well, it's going to go to the get. Okay, so what's the get going to do? Well, it's going to display an instructor form. Okay, in fact, here this is a generic code that's going to allow it to do it for each of the model classes. Okay, so get displays the form. Then what does post do? It processes the form that the user has completed and clicked on the submit button. Oh, okay, so there really are two parts to a form-based page. One is displaying the form, and the other one is processing it. And of course, if we're saying it's new, well, displaying the form is easy because you're, by definition, you are displaying an empty form. Okay. Whereas when you are processing a completed form, well, you need to process it. So let's look at the code in each. In the get, we're going to render. We have to pass the request. We have to pass the proper template. Of course, that's going to change for each of the views. So the first view that we have is for instructor. So we're going to get we're going to say that the template is form instructor form.html. So that's what's going to come through. And then we want to pass the form and the proper form class. And of course, this time it's going to be the instructor form class. Now, how do we know that? Well, just go back to views and see what we're passing. We're saying that the form class is instructor form, and here's a template name, course info instructor form.html. So that's why it works with this. Okay, so then let's go back to utils and just take a peek at the post. How's this different? Okay, so the post is going to do one of two things. Okay, either it is going to save a new instance of the class, and that's because the form is valid, or it's going to send back an error page. Okay, so that's the nature of this if else. So if the bound form is valid, it's valid. So we want to call save on the form. Okay, that's going to call a save on the model class, and we're going to get a new row in the table, and this is going to be a reference to it. and we're going to go to this new object. So what's this going to do? This is going to take us to the detail page for the new instance. Okay. Or if we blew it, okay, if we don't have a valid form, then we're going to render request template name, and we're going to pass the form. We're going to send back a form page. But the way we're sending back the form page, it's going to have the data in it that was sent to us. Okay, and it's also going to have the error messages are going to be there as well. And why do the error messages come out? Well, it's because of the fancy version that we did in our template. This form as P is going to do the job. It's going to write out all the parts of the form, and if there are errors that are detected, they're going to be displayed as well. Okay, so this is the first one. Okay, so we've got the mix-in all done, and we say that this instructor create is a object create mix-in, and let's alt return that and import it. Okay, that's good. And then we're saying that the template that we have here is for instructor form.html. And this should work. We should be able to add instructors now. So let's go test that. Again, if you go back to our cheat sheet. We didn't. We're not ready to test yet because we need a link. Okay. How are we going to click on a link that says we want to add a new instructor? Well, we could if we wanted to. We'd know the URL to type into the address bar, but we don't want to do that. So in the list.html file, the instructor list HTML file, we want to add the new link code. So let's go look at this. So let's go to our instructor list, which we already have. Instructor list. Where's instructor list? Right here. Okay, and that's fine. But you'll notice that we don't have a link for adding a new instructor, creating a new instructor. So we're going to put this right here. And I already have the pre-baked code that we're going to insert. And let's insert that. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so it's a link, and what's going to display is create new instructor. Okay, that's going to go right up under the heading for instructor list. And what's the URL that we're going to be pointing to? Well, this is going to go to the URL that's associated with the the instructor create URL pattern. Okay, so that's where that link is going to go. All right, that looks good. So now we're ready to test. So let's go. Safari can't connect to the server. Okay, we must have a problem. So I will find the problem and I will come right back. Okay, I found the problem. So I restarted my server, and all of a sudden I saw the error that I had. And it's saying attribute error, module Django forms has no attribute model form. And I'm going, I'm thinking that in forms.py that perhaps I imported the wrong thing. So I come up to forms.py and I look and I say, well, I'm was saying from Django.forms import forms. And I think that I've just imported from the wrong thing. So I think I want to say from forms, import forms. I'm sorry, from Django import forms. Import forms. And those are close names, but not the same. Okay? And so now, if I save things, again, I do that on the Mac with a Command S. Actually, I could have just clicked somewhere on a blank line, and it usually works. But on Windows, I think it would be Control S. And you can see it brought up the server. So brought up the server. So let's go to instructors. And look, this isn't styled or laid out the way we'd like, but at the top of the instructor list is the create new instructor link. Okay, so we click on that, and what do we get back? A blank form. Okay, so let's say first name will be Wilhelmina. Last name Wagner. And let's create the instructor. And here we've gone to where we expected, to the detail page for Wilhelmina Wagner. And she doesn't have any sections yet. But if you go to the instructor list, you'll see that she's been added to the instructor list. Well, great. Isn't that just what we wanted? Okay, so that's a pretty easy one. You can take the same approach on most of the tables. I'm going to do a second one. I'm going to do the sections because it could be a little more challenging. And then we'll take them from there. Then we'll have you do, I'll do sections, and we'll pause and have you do courses, semesters, and students. Okay? So let's do sections. And again, that's enough of that. Let's look at our checklist or cheat sheet. So we want to create the model form subclass in forms.py. Okay, so let's do that. So we're going to go to forms.py. Okay, and then let's look. What I like to do is just to clone one of these into the next. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Well, we want 2 blank lines between classes, and instead of instructor form, it's going to be called section form. Uh-oh, got my capitalization wrong. Still do. Section form. Okay. And let's say the model is section. And fields all looks like it's okay. Now we've got to import section. So highlight it. Alt return. Got that. Section model from models. Okay. It did that. Good. And now we want to do the we want to do the same kind of clean for all these names that we have. So we have a section name. Now, how do we know that? Well, let's just go and find models. And in models, I think the last one we did is section name. So we have the section ID. That's going to be generated because it's an auto field. We have the section name. And then we have a bunch of foreign key-ish things. So the only thing we have to worry about is the section name. So let's go back up. So we're only going to need one of these cleans. Okay. And it's not going to be first name. It's going to be section name. Okay. And down here, it's not going to be first name. It's going to be section name. And it's that easy. It really is. And let's put the 2 blanks in before the next one. Okay. So, all right, that worked fine. Let's go back to our checklist. So we did 1. Now we want to create the template for this page. And so let's do that. So that's going to be section form.html. Okay, so how do I typically do that? Well, I typically take the one that I just did. So I had an instructor form, and I clone it to make a section form. So copy this, paste it into that directory, course info, paste it, and we're going to call it section form. Now, it'd be hard to clone these forms into each other if we weren't using the magic that we have, but because of the magic that we're using, the form itself is going to be rendered by this uber magic tag, form as p. So apart from that, it's just a matter of changing things from instructor to section. So for instance, in the title, create section. Okay. And then down here, the action, we want to, the URL pattern that we want is section create, not instructor create. Okay, that's good. And then down here, we want to say create section, not create instructor. And it's really that simple. So we've cloned that one. That one's done. We've done our number 2. Create the URL pattern for this page. Well, we can take the same approach that we took the last one. So let's go to the URL patterns, URLs. Okay. And we're down to section. And if you'll remember, the one that we modeled it after was section list. And I always add these onto the bottom of the list. There are times when the order in which these are evaluated is important, but we've not come to any instance of that. So we didn't get everything we wanted. Let's go back up and let's find section list. Section list URL pattern is going to look like that. So let's put that down here. Okay. So we're going to add create into the URL string. And we're going to change the name of the view to section create. And we're going to change the name of this URL pattern to from section list to section create. We're going to need an import up here. So I always like to have them in order so they're easy to find. So we're going to add a section create here. Okay. And this is going to be unresolved because we're pointing to a view, a class-based view that we don't have yet. Okay, so we've done that part. That was number 3. Now number 4, we want to create the class-based view. So let's go do that. Let's go to the views. And I like to take one of these creates, and I like to clone them into the next one. And there's a really good reason why, for a long time I thought, well, do you want to just take the first one that you create, like instructor, and clone that into the rest? There's a part of cloning where you're changing the values in what you just copied, that you get another look at what you're changing. And so I always really like to go back to the last one. So for a section, I want to go back and copy instructor create. and use that as the basis for section create. Okay, and then I get a little bit of error checking in that too. Sometimes when I'm going through it, I'll go, oops, I got to go back and fix that. So it's an object create mix in into view. Form class is section form. And again, that's not imported, so we want to alt return and import that. Okay. And then the template name is going to be not instructor form, but section form. Okay. So that looks good. And that's it. That's all there really is. The methods are going to be inherited from object create mixin, so that's good. And then we want 2 blank lines between classes. And we've got that. Okay. So we've got the class-based view. Now we want to go into the section list HTML and add the link code. Okay, let's do that. So let's go into section list. Okay, and here's where the link code's going to go. And do I have to think up the code? No, I don't. I just go back to the last one I did, instructor list. I just go, okay, I'm just going to take that code and I'll kind of clone that. It's got the code in a div. Okay. So go back to a section list. And I'm going to click out here so it pastes right, and I'm going to paste that in. And that's good, except that it's the wrong link. Okay. So it's going to instructor create. We want it to go to section create. All right. And we want the label to say create new section. All right. Make sure we save that. Okay, so we did number 5, and now we just have to test it, number 6. Okay, and provided that we didn't have any errors, typically when you go and save, if you have broken something, you're going to get complaints that you'll see here. And I don't see anybody. I don't see any, so I don't think we have any big complaints. So let's go to the testing. Okay. So we're already on the section list, okay, because that's the default page, the way we've designed it. So how do we create a new section? Just click on here. Okay, and the section is, let's have section 901 for the summer 2018 semester. And let's teach this course, Info 691. And let's have Kevin Trainer teach it. And let's just put these 4 students in, and we'll create the section. And there we go. There it is. So it's Info 691 901 2018 summer. And if we go to the sections, there it is, right down there where it's supposed to be. So that's working great. Okay, so now it's going to be your turn to do these ones on your own. They're pretty straightforward. Together we've done instructors and sections, and then you're going to do courses, semesters, and students. And again, I recommend something that's very helpful to me, which is to use the checklist. Okay, so you have to go through this 1 through 6 3 times to do it. And I'm gonna pause this so you can go do that. And then after that, I'll show you my solution all together and working. Okay. So see you in a bit. Okay, we're back. And at this point, you should have you should have made the create pages for course, semester, and student. So I've done the same. I copied from my pre-baked to my post-baked, whatever. So I've got these things working now. So let's see how they're supposed to work. So if I go to courses, I can create a new course. So let's take a course that I teach at Illinois. So IS 590 PM. It's called Project Management. And we want to create the course. And I just also want to point out that because of the cleaning that we do, I can put extra space on the front and the back of these, not in between the words, because we're only taking off the front and the back of the string, but I can put that there and it's just cleaned right off. Okay, there's no leading or trailing spaces in either one. So if we go to courses, there's IS 590 PM, and that looks good. All right. So that was courses. Let's do semesters. So let's see. I have a 2016 summer that I just added while I was doing some testing. Let's have a 2016 fall. Or let's see. We've got, yeah, we evolved 2017. So let's add a 2016 fall. So 2016. I just want to show that if I put 2017 fall, it's going to fail because I already have one. Okay, so it catches that. And I can have a 2016 fall, and that's added. And go back to semesters, and we see that's in the list. That's good. And then for students, let's see, I want to create a new student. And let me let's say we have a Megan O'Donnell. And let's say she likes to be called Meg, and we're trying to remember that. And again, we can put some extra spaces on the beginning and end of Meg, and they're going to be trimmed away. And there they are, Megan O'Donnell, Meg. And if we go back to our list of students, well, there's Meg O'Donnell in the right spot. Okay, so what do we have so far? Well, we've just done the C of CRUD. Okay, we began with the R, which is retrieve. So we had that from the list and the detail page. And now we have the create. And later on in the same tutorial for this assignment, we're going to add the update, which is the U, and then the D, which is the D, and we're going to have full bore CRUD by the time we're done. So I'm going to say bye until next time. Bye-bye.